The Biden administration treated the press as poorly as any president has ever treated them, gave them less access, answered no questions, no transparency at any given time. Donald Trump's answered more questions in 3 weeks than Joe Biden answered in 4 years. Elon Musk answered more than
and also a lot of the answers.
Come on, Brian. This administration is giving the most access to the press they could possibly want.
Just to be clear.
As you know, we love Scott Jennings here on this program. It's the only reason to watch CNN. Of course, I don't suggest you watch CNN. That would be ridiculous. No. Just watch the good stuff right here on this show. And yesterday proved to be some really great stuff, in fact, because not only was it a great Scott Jennings panel discussion on Abby Phillip's show, which nobody really knows the name of. They just say it's the show that Scott Jennings comes on. It was great, but it was also great because it was the first time, as far as we know, we had a head-to-head confrontation between Scott Jennings and Brian Stelter. And boy, oh boy, it did not go well for the potato.
Austin, look, this is putting aside her points about lies being told in the briefing room.
Right.
There's some really interesting questions happening here about whether the White House can compel news organizations to talk about things in a particular way.
This is a power play, plain and simple. The president wants people to obey. He wants people to use the words he chooses. He wants people to fall in line. And if they don't, they lose their access. They're not allowed to be in the company of the president. Notably, in the last 2 days, when the AP reporters have been blocked, in one case, I'm told physically blocked from entering the Oval Office, the photographer was still allowed in, the AP photographer, right? Because the president still wants his photo taken. He wants the pictures, but not the words. This is a First Amendment violation, and I expect in the next few days, the AP will file suit, and they have a very strong case in court. This is yet another example where the courts will be the recourse for presidential action.
Brian,
Okay, real fast, I just want to jump in here. Scott Jennings is going to have his say, and he's going to do a great job, of course. But if I can just rebut a couple of things that I know Scott isn't going to do. This is not a First Amendment issue. The AP has every right to report. Guess what? I don't have access to the Oval Office, but I can report on the president. I don't have access to White House press briefings, but I report on the White House. Right? This is not a violation of First Amendment rights. You don't have a right to go into the Oval Office, all right, whether you're the Associated Press or anyone else, number one. Number two, this idea, well, he wants his picture taken, so the photographers are there. No. See, the photography department at the Associated Press did not violate the executive order to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. So this is all stems from AP openly saying, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this because it's wrong and it's not right. It's not truthful. So we're going to keep calling it the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, well, the photographer didn't do that. So for Brian Stelter to blatantly lie and say, well, this is because he wants his photo taken, you don't know that. Brian Stelter says without evidence, right? No, this has to do with violating the executive order having to do with the Gulf of America, number two. That's really important. And number three, and this is really getting lost in all of this, this has to do with being a part of the presidential pool. It has to. So real fast, I just need to break this down. And I do want to thank Sean Spicer, who used to be the press secretary for the White House. He's been talking about this and sort of cluing people in because it's kind of arcane. But there's various levels of media access in the White House. If you're a member of the media and you apply for a day pass, you can get a day pass and you can go cover the White House, okay? Or you can get a permanent pass and you're basically there every day. But then there's a third level, which is you get to be part of the pool. Now, the pool is a small group of reporters and photographers who go and follow the president around all the time, all right? And reporters swing in and out of that, okay? They take turns because you literally, wherever the president goes, you go. And you camp out outside the door if he's in a building or an office or whatever. And what you do is you file what's called a pool report. And the pool report is a report that all the other reporters who aren't following the president around that day, they use that pool report. Right? You've heard this term before, right? A pool report. And so the Associated Press wants to be a part of that pool. They are a part of the pool reporting, which means they're going and they're reporting on behalf of and delivering information that all these other news outlets are going to use. See, that's the problem. Because let's say the president is flying over the Gulf of America one day, and part of the story has to do with the Gulf of America. And the AP reporter is the pool reporter that day. But the company he works for demands that he not call it the Gulf of America. So as a member of the pool, he's going to, well, basically deliver bad information. He's going to say the president flew over the Gulf of Mexico today. And that's going to be the pool report that gets delivered to all the other reporters to use and all the other publications to use. Do you understand what I'm saying here? And so the White House press department has said, well, you can't be part of the pool because you're not going to report the facts. You're not going to be accurate. You're going to follow this new style guide that you guys have decided to use. And that's the other thing. See, the AP likes to pretend that they're in charge of the language we're all allowed to use. A whole bunch of publications use what's called the AP style guide. And you follow the right way to identify journalists or identify landmarks, to identify departments, the way, the nomenclature. That's why a lot of times when you read articles or hear reports on the radio or television, they all sort of sound the same, or they all sort of have the same sort of delivery and the same sort of language they use because they're using the AP style book. And so the AP style book has said, well, no, there's no such thing as the Gulf of America. We're going to call it the Gulf of Mexico. And so the White House has said, yeah, you know what? You're not accurate. Sorry, you can go ahead and do whatever you want, but that doesn't mean we have to give you access to the pool. Does that all make sense? All right, I just want to lay that out there because they don't necessarily go into the weeds, but, you know, we'd like to go into the weeds here. We're smart. You're a very smart audience, and I want to make sure that you get the full story here about what's going on instead of what Anna Navarro wants you to believe. All right, go ahead.
The other media outlets doing?
Right now,
Yeah.
they're still showing up. They're still asking questions. But that's right. The Correspondents Association has condemned this and called it unacceptable. I think you're suggesting maybe reporters should, what, skip the briefing?
Should band together because, I
Skip
mean,
the,
listen,
Q&As?
if the bully manages to bully one, he's not going to stop at one.
I don't think this is as emotional as you're making it out to be. You know, take away the hysteria for a moment. First off, Trump doesn't need
Who's
AP
being
to take-
hysterical?
both of you. Trump doesn't need, first of all, AP
You
to
obviously
take
don't
his
know what a
photographs.
hysterical and a Navarro is
I
like.
just believe it comes down to compliance.
That's true,
Trump
actually.
put out an executive order. There was an executive order. He changed the name legally to Gulf of America. They're United States based. I know they're international as well, but right now they're covering U.S. politics. So if he makes an executive order, they should respect that. And if they don't, being there is not a right; it's a privilege.
So
It's
I'm
not
just
just
gonna-
gonna-
I'm gonna
add in here, though, this has been called the Gulf of Mexico for 400 years,
Right.
and every other nation calls it the Gulf of Mexico. So just
They're-
because Trump
they're
claims that
operating
we
out of the
need to,
United States.
okay, but doesn't this feel like a really weird, like wokeism thing on the right? Like it feels like the right's version of like Latinx or like birthing person. It
Well,
just feels
we-
like a
we
really
had to
weird
comply
hill
with
to
that.
die on. that
Nobody,
we're gonna-
by the way, just to be
we're
clear,
gonna force
nobody had
outlets
to
to cover it.
comply with any of that.
Yeah, if
I
the
don't think I've
Biden,
ever
if
said
the
the word
Biden
birthing
administration did that,
And if they
Till now.
did,
People
I
would be
think
up in arms.
you know, heads would be exploding at this table.
Maybe
If
they should-
someone
they
said to
they
you,
should,
you've got to
call it
refer
a-
to people as
They should
birthing
adopt
people.
the Prince method. Just have a little symbol called the Gulf, formerly known as the Gulf of Mexico, which should now be called whatever the hell.
They
Well,
should
but
say
there's a much
formerly
broader-
Gulf
The
of
Gulf of whatever the hell he wants.
But there's a much
petty.
broader
It's petty.
danger.
I just-
Today, it's the Gulf of Mexico or
Right.
the Gulf of America. Tomorrow, what is it? The president says there's only two genders in this world. We all know transgender people. What happens when the AP reports on transgender Americans? What happens when CNN or ABC or the New York Times?
Okay,
Are-
on the
are those the
contrary,
next
what
outlets
if
to
I
be
believe
punished?
that there's two genders and then Biden tells me that there's 73. What I don't comply with that.
Yeah, but
the Biden
But again,
administration
it's-
isn't barring Fox News from covering
Biden,
press
right?
conferences.
He's not going to ban you from
And Trump
coming into
hasn't
the
done
White
that
House
yet.
because
This
you
is
have a
what I
different
mean about
belief.
the But
Well,
Why
for the last 2 days, though, the AP has been blocked from attending events that it's
Will not
attended for
comply with the
decades.
executive
No,
order.
I really would,
you
would
want the
rather you
president to do that?
not refer to me
To
as,
ban AP?
as hysterical for expressing an opinion. I think that's incredibly disrespectful. I don't do it to you.
By the way, I just want to jump in here because it's been like 2 minutes since the woman described Anna Navarro's reaction as hysterical, and she decided, you know what, enough of all this talk about freedom of the press and the First Amendment and the AP and executive orders. Listen, lady, don't you call me hysterical. You know, one way to not be called hysterical is to, well, not act in a hysterical way. We all watch The View, Anna. Okay, but I love that. All right, fine. She has her priorities. Here comes Scott Jennings. Look at he's getting all revved up. Let's do it.
Why do you think the AP won't just call it the Gulf of America? I mean,
That's
the
petty.
president
Well,
does
let me
rename
just
things. We rename what's the mountain, Denali,
Okay.
Mount McKinley.
let me
I mean,
let me
things get
let me
renamed
read
from time to
let me
time.
read their explanation for why they are not doing it. Essentially, they are saying that the Trump's order only carries authority within the United States. Mexico, as well as other countries and international bodies, do not have to recognize that name change. The Gulf of Mexico has carried that name for 400 years. As was said at the table, and the Associated Press is going to refer to it by its original name while acknowledging that Trump has a new name that he would like to call it. They are an international organization. No one except Trump with a pen has said that it's the Gulf of America. it's a body of water that also has borders with another country, and it's been named that for 400 years.
I know, but we
By the way, can I just, I don't know if you're picking up on this, but by continuing to say it's been called that for 400 years, it's been called that for 400 years. They're sort of revealing the irony here. It's like, okay, so where do you begin counting when it's official or not? All right, we're saying that in the United States of America, the president does have the legal authority to do this, and he's done it. And you're ignoring that because 400 years ago, it was named something in another way. Well, I assure you that it was called 400 years ago. Let's count backwards. What are we talking about? 1600s. Oh, you mean during the colonization of North America by those evil Western Europeans? Is that what you're talking about? I'm sorry, you want to so you want to give it the colonial name. What about the indigenous peoples of this country? Surely they called it something else, right? I believe Lake Superior in Michigan was known by the Gitchagumi was the name. I only know that because I'm from Michigan, and we all know Gordon Lightfoot's song, "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," where they refer to the Lake Superior as Gitchagumi. The big lake they call Gitchagumi. So should we all call it Gitchagumi? I mean, why do you get to decide? Well, 400 years ago, when the colonists exploring America from Europe, they called it Gulf of Mexico. So that's what we have to call it. I mean, again, by the way, if that's what you want to call it, go ahead. That's what you want to call it. But to like hang your hat on that and say, oh, well, this is what we've called it for 400 years. Yeah, thank you very much. Can we talk about Rhodesia in Zimbabwe? Can we talk about Myanmar and Burma? Where does this all begin and when does it end? All right. We weren't the ones who started all the name changes for political correct purposes. So what's being done here is the exposing of all of their hypocrisy because they loved it. They loved it when Obama renamed Mount McKinley Denali. They absolutely loved it. Why you name a mountain after a souped up high-level GMC truck, I'll never quite figure that out. But it could do your thing, Obama. Whatever. They absolutely loved it. They celebrated. Oh, he's so wonderful. Now, Trump does it, and the AP decides to. And then for anybody who thinks that the AP is doing this for some sort of international brand purposes and not for direct, obvious political purposes, you're lying to everyone around you, including yourself. All right, so I'll let the conversation ensue.
We have a lawful process in this country for changing the name of it. The president went through it with the Secretary of the Interior, by the way. I mean, it feels a little
different. Can I just answer your Denali question? The Denali thing.
Wait, one other thing here. I'm sorry. I don't mean to jump in, but just from the pure media aspect, you do realize what happens on this show on a nightly basis? Scott Jennings debates everybody at the table, and they all debate each other, and then he has to turn and debate the host. Every single show, he has to debate Abby Phillip. Why don't they just make this show a two-person show, and the two of them go at it? And the answer is, because she'd be left in a puddle at the end of every show. But it's just maddening to me that Scott Jennings has to take it everywhere on the table, and then he has to turn and debate the host as well.
Is actually different because that's a place that's in the United States proper. It exists in.
But we changed the name of it. The point is we changed the name.
We have the ability to change the name. It's Mount McKinley. It's Mount McKinley.
But we also have the ability to change this body of water. I think, look, this smacks to me of a news organization looking for a way to pick a fight with Donald Trump over something that they don't need to pick a fight over.
Exactly.
B, he is the president, and there is a lawful process that he did follow to do it.
The news organization why won't they just pick a fight with Donald Trump over this? Donald Trump picked a fight with the news organization.
No, they're not calling it by the name.
No, the news organization can do whatever they want. If they want to call it the Gulf of South America, they can call it.
But
that.
why would I respect a news organization that doesn't deal in reality?
You don't have to.
If to not call it what
they can call it whatever they want because there's free speech in this country. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, but that, in my opinion, if you're not willing to call something by the proper name based on the laws of the United States, that calls into question your judgment. And are you a news organization?
By the way, there are no laws in play here. It's an executive order, and the body of water is not named by the United States. It's named by global organizations that name global landmarks.
By the way, I'm going to leave it right there with Scott Jennings' face because we've already spent a lot of time on this one. Unless there's an objection from Kevin whether we should play this out to the end. But that I cherish that moment where Abby Phillips has determined that global bodies of water are not named by the country that it's adjacent to. They're named by global organizations responsible for naming global landmarks, I believe, is what Abby Phillips, the highly intelligent and very well educated journalist who runs this show for CNN every night. I'd love for somebody to deliver the name of that global organization responsible for naming global landmarks, because I don't think it exists. I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. In fact, the word Mexico isn't even a someone's calling me and I'm not sure why. The word Mexico is not even an indigenous word. Mexico is, came from the Spanish conquistadors. Why are we acknowledging that? But America is not even an indigenous word. When did we start the timeline on all of this? But the entire conversation is ridiculous here. That Scott has to do, that face is classic. That he has to even engage in, because the bottom line is this: if you're a journalist and you're covering the White House, it's not your right, it's a privilege. The White House has every right to deny you access to wherever they want to deny you access to, and you can continue to cover that White House however you would like. The fact of the matter is, access to the White House means a bunch of money for AP, and they get rich off of that access. And that's why they're pissed off about this. They claim that this is about the First Amendment, and they claim that it's about free speech, but it's not. They have every right to call the Gulf of America whatever they want to call it, and they have every right to report on President Trump as much as they'd like. Free speech is not the same as access to the President of the United States, and everybody knows that. And Brian Stelter looked like a little midget compared to, well, Scott Jennings and the truth. But we should expect that, I suppose, at this point, because, well, he is kind of a little midget, and he is very unfamiliar with the truth.